Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us live streaming tonight from Preserve Moose in Little Rock, Arkansas. Yay! We're so happy to have you joining us tonight. This is the Yarn and Washitaw Foothills Youth and Media Arts and Literacy Collective joint production of Black Lives Matter Storytelling Show. Let's give it up for the storytellers! Yay! We have 10 storytellers coming to you tonight with wonderful, powerful stories that they have been practicing for you for the past 2 to 3 weeks. They're showing amazing courage and bravery, getting up here, sharing pieces of themselves with you. So thank you for receiving them with grace and support. I'm going to bring up our MC tonight. We are so thrilled to have the one and only Tim Campbell, who's going to be our MC tonight. Yeah, give it up. Tim Campbell is a Little Rock native. He graduated from Central High School, went to University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, spent 2 years in the Gambia in the Peace Corps, is set to graduate from the Clinton School of Public Service with his master's in public service. Wow. And if that wasn't enough, if that was not enough, he was just now named from Arkansas Business one of the 250 most influential leaders in 2020 in Arkansas. Yeah! It is with great pride that I bring up my student and friend, Tim Campbell. All right.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Within Black lives are Black voices. Born 3 pounds, 4 ounces at the UAMS hospital. Drugs in my lungs, in my system, and nearly promised that I wouldn't make it as a child. My mom was a teenager. My dad was nowhere on the scene. And it looked like a very unfortunate situation from the beginning. After being on a ventilator, being placed into an incubator, I was told that there was a great chance that I wouldn't make it. After strong prayers from strong people, that conclusion changed. I began to breathe. I began to eat. I began to smile. I began to laugh. Because that's what babies do. Shortly after, I started school, grade school, just like anyone else. Dealing with the day-to-day life, the striving with parents. I can remember back to career day, when it was time for, children to say what exactly they wanted to be when they became older, when they became great citizens of the state of Arkansas. And when it was my time to get on stage, I did not hesitate to tell everyone in that space that I wanted to be a Crip and a gang member. Shortly after, of course, with it being a private school, based on Christian views, I was snatched off of that stage and took back to the back, and I was prayed for preciously. I was privileged to not follow that stereotype, not to follow behind what that meant to me as a child. I was able to surpass saying I wanted to be a Crip to saying that I want to travel the world, to I want to graduate high school. My mom was not privileged to graduate high school. My grandmother wasn't privileged to graduate high school. Being a first college graduate, first generation college graduate, first generation high school graduate meant the life and soul to me. I promised myself after undergrad I wouldn't go back to school, and I did that, for the motivation of my family and my sisters, and I was done. I have a friend that reminds me of the things that I said every time I run into him. But now, Not even 2 years back from 2.5 years serving my country, working with malnourished children in the Gambia, West Africa. 100-degree weather, speaking another language, learning another culture for the abundance and the diaspora of Black Americans and what that looks like for us. I was able to bring back so much tradition, so much culture, so much richness, so much knowledge back to Black Americans that was almost seems as if it was a missing space for us. And now I stand, dealing with the issues of my voice and dealing with what that looks like for me. And always being afraid to use my voice and to stretch my voice and to say anything, especially the right things. Because the things that I've seen as a child, the people and the Black males that I've seen that got in front of podiums and spoke with their heart and souls about what they believe, they were killed. So having this constant mental image of erasure of different people that, I could admire for doing exactly the things that I would love to do, it placed great fear in my heart. But I'm not a victim of that fear. I'm not a victim of that erasure. I'm not a victim of that stereotype. I plan to use my voice and continue. And using my voice, it led me into leading thousands of people over the summer, giving them healthy platforms to use their voice, to motivate other people to use their voice and their platforms. And today I don't stand here as a Crip. I don't stand here as an ex-gang member. I don't stand here as a high school dropout, a college graduate, college dropout. I stand here as one of Arkansas's 250 most influential leaders.
Yeah! All right.
Within Black lives, there are Black voices.
All right.
So now, since that's out the way, Black lives, Black voices, we're going to get into our rotation. And next, we have, I personally know him as a great man. Can't miss him if he walks in the room. Can't overhear him because you're gonna hear what he has to say. An instructor, a graffiti artist, comic book illustrator, portrait artist, graphic designer, a spoken word artist, singer, producer, musician. He does it all, people. I bring you LaRon McAdoo.
I feel so blessed with such an introduction. You know what? There is a hope side to Black Lives Matter. There's a hope side. There's that side that believes in a better tomorrow, a greater future, a glory to come. That's why the fight is on. Well, my grandmother, Mama Charlotte, she had a quote that spoke to that greater future and that promise. And that quote was, "We're living off the prayers of others." And when you recognize that we're living off the prayers of others, we understand that somebody imagined that promise. Everybody say three.
Three.
There were three men that I know my grandmother had to have prayed for. And one of them is Slick McAdoo, her husband, Granddaddy Slick. And she had to have prayed for him because he had a 3rd grade education, signed his name with an X, but was so powerful that he had found a Negro League team called the Clowns. So powerful that he was an entrepreneur and he was a junk man. Until I was 10 years old, all I wanted to be was a junk man. So powerful that even though he only made $3,000 a year, when my father was about to drop out of school because he had lost some of his money, he said, I need to borrow $1,000. She prayed probably over my father and for my grandfather, and he gave that $1,000 up. And he was a builder. He built with his own hands the house that they lived in and my father grew up in. So you can see that we are truly living off the prayers of others, and he was living off her prayers. Everybody say two. Two. My father, C. McAdoo, or as he calls himself, Cool Stone. She had to have prayed for my father because he was one of 3 to integrate his high school. He was the first one to venture out beyond the home and go to school to a place called Philander Smith College, where he found my mother.
All right.
Yeah, he's a Panther. She had to have prayed for him. He had to be living off her prayers to get through the Vietnam War as a draftee and not be injured in any way. Those were prayers. And for him to be the first one to graduate college and now be called Dr. Reverend Dr. C. McAdoo, that's living off prayers. My grandmother prayed, and I know that I'm living off her prayers. Everybody say one. One. Well, the last man I want to talk about that she had to have prayed for was a funny looking dude with a funny looking hat whose name Ron Mack. I wasn't even trying to rhyme, but hey. So I think about what happened with me. And I think about flunking the 3rd grade, the teachers wanting to hold me back. And now in a master's program, a thesis away from my master's, graduating from undergrad with honors, I know she had to have prayed for me. I think about having a problem spelling, which I still do, but the author of 4 books and a well-known poetry slam artist across the nation, award-winning, having a love for language, an entertainer and a Mactivator. I'm sorry, y'all thought I said activator. No, Mactivator. That's my motivational speaking tag. She had to have prayed for me. She had to. For me to be where I am right now. And you know, that better tomorrow, that greater future, that glorious to come day has another name in religious circles. The complete and ultimate trust in something that has no proof, they call that faith. Regardless of how many bullets blast, bombard, and break black bodies, laughter still manages to surface above the sorrow, no matter how this country paid a debt of gratitude with a signed check to exclude. The stitch of implicit bias hasn't sickened my stomach for ambition's audacity. There's a smell bowl within my soul, more powerful than the powers that be. This stems from buds of hope that blooms into full-fledged flowers of faith. Sprouting signs of God. How else have we defied the odds and stood against the system so royally? Our crowns are jeweled with froze, braids, dreads, fades, laid in low shade. A determined kingdom's grace written on our face. Black don't crack. Crack exemplifies our faith. Our fire holding our age like a bloodline to the founder, youth, the lifeline to the mountaintop to seeing our reflection. Something higher. to hearing jazz, blues, gospel, and hip-hop, a communication of consciousness, melody and rhyme coated with resilience. This is a language of brilliance, reaching for revival, the straightened backs like the spine of the Bible. Black folk pray, pressing palms to leave no space for doubt, to count on what can't be counted out. To know no lawyer is needed to put you in God's will. To know God's hand on the wheel, enough to keep you driven down this inheritance of belief while steering this explanation. She is faith, the complete and ultimate trust in something that has no proof. You can believe that from the start. And you can trust that from my heart, because we've come this far by faith, leaning on the Lord, trusting in His holy word. He's never failed me yet, yet. Oh, can't turn around. We've come this far by faith. Thank you.
Wow, can that be given another hand? Such a powerful story. The 3, the 2, the 1, the blast off. Thank you for that powerful story. Next up we have Mackenzie Davis, who is a social worker here in Little Rock, graduated with a bachelor's degree of psychology from Philander Smith College, a Panther. Over the past 10 years, he's worked with families to maneuver through difficult journeys. She recently accepted a position within the National Association of Social Worker Arkansas chapter as a board member to lend her voice and skills during the challenging time. Mackenzie wants to share the story of finding her voice in space of vulnerability. I present you Mackenzie Davis.
All right.
Hey. So, in the year 2000, my mom, rudely as I like to call it, uprooted me from Crosset, Arkansas to Eudora, Arkansas. So, if you don't know the difference between the two, Crosset is fairly diverse, very diverse. Eudora is an all-black town. And it was such a cultural shock for me because, well, first of all, I know I'm black. You can't miss that. But I had never in my life been around so many black people in my life. And the reality of it is that I didn't fit in. I grew up listening to Britney Spears, Jessica Simpson, Christina Aguilera, and NSYNC was my jam. And so when I moved at the age of 13 to a small town where everybody had grew up together from preschool or they were family members, I didn't know what my place was. I didn't know where I belonged. I didn't know how to fit in. Because the reality of it is that there was a part of me that felt like I was not black enough. And I had to figure that out. So one thing my mom always taught me was, she was like, baby, don't worry about it. When you get to college, you're going to meet your lifelong friends. And so when I graduated high school, I went to Philander Smith College, and I met the foundation of my tribe. And the community that Philander gave me was so powerful because I had all teachers that looked like me, that were invested in me. And I had friends that accepted me for who I was. When I graduated from Philander, I went to work for an agency, and that's when I met Margie and Brenda. And they were so pivotal in who I am today because they saw something in me that I did not see in myself. They saw something that I could not see in myself because, one, I didn't think I was worthy, and two, I had very low self-esteem. And I remember them saying, Mackenzie, your calling is to be a social worker. I knew my calling was to be a therapist. I knew that there was so much power in me being for little boys and girls what I didn't see when I was growing up. And I was like, no, I'm complacent. I'm good. Just let me be great. Let me work with the girls. I'm good. And they kept bugging me, like hardcore bugging me. So finally, I took the MAT. I applied for grad school literally just so they would leave me alone. I had no intentions of getting into grad school. I just wanted them to stop bugging me about it. But I got in. And thank you. And in 2014, I graduated with my master's in social work. And throughout that time, Margie was such a powerful force for me. And in 2018, she was murdered. And that was traumatic enough to drive me into therapy. And Margie died on a Monday, March 26th. I had my first therapy appointment March 30th, and we buried her on March 31st. So, when I first walked into my therapy appointment, that was so hard because I knew in that moment my therapist was going to see me as a broken person. I knew that in order to get what I needed, I had to be vulnerable. And for me, being vulnerable meant weakness, and I had no space to be weak because I carried the weight of everybody that I worked with. Not to mention that I was also fighting my inner self because I was a fairly passive person who felt like they didn't have a voice. And in the moments in which I felt like I could speak up and speak out, my worst fears of like not having a voice or just being an angry Black woman was spoken to be true. Because there were a lot of times in which I was the only Black person in spaces that I worked in. And so in the moments in which I felt strong enough to advocate for my clients, I was labeled as the angry Black woman. And so I stopped. And the moment that I realized I couldn't advocate for my boys or advocate for the people that I'm here to serve, I knew that something had to change. And so in 2018, my partner and I started working on a training, and it's literally called Treating African American Women When the Cake Gets in the Way. And it changed my life because I am that African American woman and I had that cape. I didn't realize it yet. So that spring in 2019, we spoke at the NASW. We spoke at my current job. We went to Florida and spoke. But I tell you, the pivotal moment of us doing that training was when they invited us to speak at Yale. Y'all, they let two Black women come speak about Black women at Yale. They didn't know what was coming for them because they got all that information. Imagine spending a year talking about Mammy, Sapphire, Jezebel, and how we carry that and how we can remove that and just be who we are and take care of ourselves. It was beautiful. And it was during that time that I realized that my calling was to use my voice, that my calling was to create spaces in which there were not spaces for Black people to use their voice. So during this year, it's been a hard year. I took that, and another partner and I, we held a panel where 3 Black men, male therapists, they were able to have the platform to speak about what it was like for them being a therapist, seeing images of themselves being killed in the media and how they were coping with that. And that was so powerful to give them that platform to do that. Following that, by some miracle, I had about 15 Black therapists that were willing to go on this journey with me, in which 15 white therapists allowed them to use their Facebook, their platform, to amplify their voices. And that's a vulnerable space to be in for anybody. And so I realized that not only am I here to use my voice to create spaces that are not seen, I'm also here to create other platforms for other Black people to use their voice. Because at the end of the day, I am a Black woman, and y'all gonna hear my voice.
Another round of applause for Mackenzie. The power of voice, the power of voice. I'm sure we're going to hear that so many times tonight. That's one of the reasons we're here. The power of voice. I really appreciate that. That was beautiful. Next, coming to the stage, we have Mrs. Andrea Neal. Andrea is a native of Little Rock, Arkansas, proud graduate of Little Rock Central High School, and of Euler, University of Arkansas Medical Science, where she oversees allegations, policy, procedures related to sexual misconduct, and provides accommodations to students with disabilities. She's also co-chair of Racial and Ethnic Diversity, Disability Knowledge and Practice Group for the Association of Higher Education and Disability. Please give her a warm welcome, Mrs. Andrea Neal.
Whew. I come as one, but I stand as 10,000. The 10,000 that I come for is my family members who told me stories of them growing up where they had to be at home before sunset, or a Klansman would be at the edge of the bridge that led to their house with dogs that were trained to attack them. And in the event that they arrived after sunset, they had to walk in ditches to get home safely. That was before I realized what a sundown town was. They also taught me about how they integrated their elementary, junior high and high school, and how their white counterparts mistreated them. This is before I really understood the contributions of the Little Rock 9 that paved the way for me to attend and graduate from Little Rock Central High. Hell, old gold. I also learned about my great-grandfather, J.C. Knox, who was part of the Lane race riots. I learned it as the race riots. Who was one of the 12 sharecroppers who were arrested for inciting a riot when actually they were just having a meeting to organize to demand their rights, when law enforcement invaded their meeting. Shots were fired, and next thing we know, the textbooks say 800 Black people when it was probably 1,000 to 2,000 Black people were massacred in their homes. He never returned home to our family, so we didn't know if he was out in the world hungry, alone, or even loved. I have family members who passed as white to survive, but now people are passing as Black because their lives are mediocre. I always thought that racism would be a noose, a hood, dogs, I never returning home, but what I realized was that it was attending Franklin Elementary School, where I left the painted cedar block walls of my classroom that was down the street from the housing projects where we had drive-by drills, to go to Crystal Hill Elementary School for science fair. And I knew something wasn't right, but at that young age, I really didn't know what was going on. Years later, I didn't know if it was because I was a little black girl or if it was because of my zip code. I knew what racism was, or I experienced what racism was when I attended Pulaski Heights Junior High, and I saw the resources available for me, as well as the opportunities afforded to me versus Southwest Junior High, which was the school that I was zoned for. When I went to the University of Arkansas at Little Rock and I majored in history with emphasis in Civil War and Reconstruction, where I had one black teacher, I noticed that the contributions are even being mentioned, black people being mentioned, didn't exist outside of that space. As I went on to relocate to Dallas because I wanted to restore historic districts and homes, I attended art school, interior design school. And I noticed that me and the African students, we were always critiqued for our designs, our bold color compositions, our bold architecture, but our white counterparts, they always got oohs and ahs, and their projects were displayed for their traditional colorless designs. I never knew if it was because maybe I wasn't that great of a designer, and I never really got to find out because as I graduated, the housing market crashed. I was laid off from my job in design and construction in the corporate office of one of the top 5 international hospitality companies. I then went on to work for one of the top 3 financial institutions in the country for the home modification program. I was really excited because I thought I can help homeowners who worked really hard to get the American dream save their houses. Y'all, I was dumb. I was real dumb. What I realized is one group in particular benefited from these programs. And while African American and Latinx people did receive short-term help, it really didn't benefit them. But at the end of the day, it was only 2 colors that these financial institutions were concerned about. That was staying out of the red and green. I went on to work for another top 5 financial institution in their sector, where I saved the company not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 multi-million, billion-dollar portfolios because the account manager that I was assigned to didn't have good customer service skills. I then asked, how can I become an account manager? They redirected me to become a supervisor. See, all the account managers were white women. All the supervisors were black women, and they dang sure weren't paid well. I relocated back to Little Rock, Arkansas because my sister adopted my 2 nieces, 2 of my heartbeats. I later purchased a home across the street from the house I grew up in. Y'all, I'm on my 3rd insurance company. The first 2 insurance companies dropped me as after they harassed me with phone calls, my agent popping up in my house and letters in the mail asking me to change things on my house that were already going to be changed because I was rehabbing the house for some street revitalization. They dropped me because my house was either high risk or my neighborhood was high risk, even though I sent them a construction schedule of what we plan to do, and I sent crime statistics for my area in an area that was near me that was considered safe. They didn't care. They still dropped me. We went to get a permit, and the process that they gave my black contractor versus my white contractor made me question some things, and then next thing I know, I had a warning for the grass in my yard being too high. They always get you with the grass. A couple months ago, I went to Baltimore, and as I was driving down the street with my friends, I saw the stores, the companies have Black Lives Matter signs in their windows, and I was like, yes, they get it, but it clicks. And as it clicks, my friend was like, girl, they don't care about you, they just care about your money. And I realized the Black Lives Matter signs in their windows are replacing the Jim Crow colored signs that my mom and them experienced growing up. I was wondering, how many black employees did they have? Were they treating them and paying them in an equitable manner as they were their white employees? Were they giving them professional development and mentorship opportunities? Were they seeking out black businesses for goods and services and displaying their products in a prominent manner as they did their white businesses? All these things went through my mind, and I became upset. See, the thing about all of this is that we've overcame, superseded, jumped over every hurdle, challenge, and obstacle that has came our way. We have reconfigured ourselves, have mental health issues to conform to respectability politics. We've been a Mammy. We've been a Jezebel. We've been a Sapphire. We done already told you that our Black Lives Matter. So what is it that you are going to do? Show me something tangible. See, I stand on this stage today as one, but I stand and I speak for 10,000. But the better question is, who do you stand with and what do you stand for?
You can do a lot better than that. Give her another hand. Next, I want to bring to the stage Mr. Rod Howard. Rod's a hip-hop artist, musician, videographer, and he's also a Little Rock native. Please give him a hand.
My son say he got called a nigga the other day. Put me in a bad position, forcing me to contemplate. Explaining racism to a child that's only 8, trying to explain why some people's hearts is just so full of hate. Just goes to show racism rears its ugly head today. Sads me that it's a monster we're unable to escape. Within a lifetime, that's why I get so frustrated. Wonder if years been marching for freedom with just years wasted. Cause my people still get oppressed on a daily basis. We get murdered, end up on losing ends of court cases. What up, Trayvon, Mike, Eric, and Emmett? Got me feeling my existence could be ended at any minute by any cop that wrongfully labels me as a menace. Decides my skin color makes me worthy of a death sentence. And it's crazy cause for a minute, man, I'm ashamed to admit it. Thought my clean cut appearance saved me from being afflicted. From racial discrimination to the day I got called a nigga. Till I got harassed by cops and saw the world a little clearer. Now I know that my appearance don't make a damn difference. Whether I'm clean cut, thugged out, light, or dark skinned. As long as my skin's pigmented, I'ma be labeled a little different, man. God bless the foolish and ignorant enough to say different. Ain't like the lives we living is our imagination's figments. How dare you say the lives we live ain't real cause you don't get it? Cause your folks wasn't stole from their home, sold in captivity, made personal slaves till they was given their liberty, forced into the ghettos to lead lives of poverty, go from being kings and queens to the Western world's mockery. I hate when people say don't let the past bother me, when my people presently treated improperly. Got me so full of rage, it's taking every piece of me. To pray for the foolish, conduct myself peacefully. Lord help me, let me get up out my feelings, even though it's hard to do when I think of all these killings and all the sad deaths of all these innocent children. Force me into prayer, hope the good Lord sees me kneeling. Yeah, I hope the Lord sees me praying. I hope he hears just what I'm saying. I hope the Lord takes my sisters and my brothers of all different colors, makes us love one another. Pray he takes us out the dark, brings us to the light. I pray that in the time, man, he makes us right. So... This is the piece I just did was something I wrote called "We'll Get It Right," and I was actually motivated to write that piece. Well, I wrote it to kind of deal with the anger and rage and just kind of frustration that I kind of felt a few years ago when my son told me that he had been exposed to the word nigga at school. Also kind of compounded by just the anger and just frustration I felt from just all of the murders of innocent black men and women at the hands of police in our country. Since writing that piece over the years, I've continued to write more art, create artwork and films and things that are kind of motivated by that. But I gotta admit that while actually creating that content, there's always been a piece of me that felt I didn't have the right to speak on these things, or even just trying to figure out if it's even my role to do this, or what is my role in the bigger scheme of things. So as I kind of dealt with it, and because the reality is, I don't claim to be an authority in the matter. I'm not any type of activist or political leader. I'm none of that. I'm just a black dude that grew up in Little Rock that tries to talk about my personal experience. So what I want to briefly talk about is just kind of how my journey to kind of accepting my role in all of this and trying to figure out what my role is and accepting that and just kind of find my voice and my right to actually feel like I have the right to speak on this. So I feel like I had been on this journey for a long time, but I feel like the light bulb just kind of like finally went off above my head earlier this year, because I was actually got an opportunity to work on a really cool film project that was kind of motivated on trying to teach people about like why we're protesting right now, discussing like what we want our goals to be out of protest and what we hope to accomplish, and more importantly, how do people actually find their role in trying to contribute to the fight for equal treatment. But I got the opportunity to work on this while I was working on this film project to kind of educate people about that. I got a chance to like talk to a lot of people from around the city, a lot of activists around the city, community leaders, and amongst them, I got an opportunity to talk to this one brother. Y'all might know him, Ryan Davis. And there's a story when I asked Ryan about this. There was a story he told me that I thought was so cool, and he talked about during the civil rights movement. There was a lady, she would make bologna sandwiches for people. And I was like, man, bologna sandwiches. But she would make bologna sandwiches for the protesters and everything while they were protesting. And you may hear this and you say, bologna sandwich, it's not a big deal. She just made bologna sandwich. But when you break it down and you think about it, those protesters out there fighting, they probably get tired and hungry. And when you're out protesting, you can't just leave if you got something going on. But they're being able to go over there, get a sandwich, and go back. That's a big deal. So what I was kind of able to take from that story is that this lady, man, she made bologna sandwich. That was her part. And the thing is, everybody plays a part or has a role in this movement. There's some parts that you look at. People say there's bigger parts where where the people that are organizing things and speaking, and a lot of times that's what we focus on, and we don't pay attention to the small things like that goes in. There's big parts and small parts, but there's no such thing as an unimportant part. So after kind of getting the opportunity to think about that, because I think that everybody has something that they can do. They have gifts, or they have a thing that they can do that actually can impact the people around them and the world around them. And I had to take all this information and think about that, do some self-evaluation, and ask myself, what is it that I can do? What are my gifts? What can I do? And after doing that, I feel like my thing is creating. That is my gift. That is what my God-given ability to be able to create. So how can I use that to help things out? So once I kind of accepted that and I broke that down, because I think when you think about art, you say, oh, that's not a big deal. And I had to get out my head about that because it is a big deal.
That's right.
With art, especially the role of an artist, like people don't think about that. When artists create art, regardless of whether they're aware of it or not, their artwork is influenced by the world around you. So you're almost like a historian in a way. You're documenting the world around you. So it's important in that regard. But the thing I think that really makes being an artist important, and it makes it important in this whole movement, is that a lot of times with art, you have the ability to touch people's heart and soul through your artwork. And what that does, I feel like that creates a really unique opportunity to kind of convey a message over to somebody, make them receptive to listening to a message or perspective that they otherwise wouldn't have been receptive to listening to at all. So it's really important. So I've taken that, and what I've kind of come to the conclusion about is that I'm going to continue to create. And I personally feel like other people that do create, if you're a writer, you should continue to write about document the world around you, and you should talk about your personal perspectives like James Baldwin did. If you're a singer, you should continue to sing and perform and do things that influence the people around you like Marvin Gaye did. And the list goes on and on with the Tupacs and Kendrick Lamars. I can go on and on, these other artists that use their medium to do that. But tying it back to myself, regardless of, because I may not have influence like the Kendrick Lamar or Tupac, but it's my responsibility to continue to create art with the intention of trying to make a difference or influence with the people that are in my reach. So I say all this to say that, man, this is kind of my journey to kind of just discovering my role as an artist, and I have to say that going forward, I'll continue to accept my right to speak on these things and accept my role in this, because I'm not just creating art. My intention is to try to create change through my art. But
That's right.
Thank you so much.
Say that.
He said he wants to continue to create.
Yeah.
And I wish you would do that. Give him another hand. Thanks, bro. Next guy that's coming up, I personally know this man to be a great man. If you don't know him or what church he goes to, you're going to learn it tonight. Very religious man, very strong. I want to introduce tonight Ryan Davis. Ryan Davis is a ordained elder in the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church and associate pastor at the Bullock Temple CME Church. He's executive director of Little Rock Children International, studied American Studies, Religion at Lake Forest College in Lake Forest, Illinois. He's also a native of Little Rock. He is grateful husband to Kimberly King Davis and a proud father of Delaney Lewis, who's 9, Sarah, who is 7, and Ella, who's 4. Please give a warm welcome for Ryan Davis.
Yeah!
Thank you, sir. I feel like we ought to bow to him every now because it's, you in like 1/10 of 1%.
That's right.
So I'll talk about it. Congratulations to you, very well deserved. And I need to update my bio because I note that the age of my children is 1 year behind. So they're 10, 8, and 5 now. Right, good for them. It's. I thought it was important to say that the good police officer becomes elusive in a sea of bad apples. The good police officer gets lost in a sea of bad experiences. My grandfather, the Right Reverend Dr. Levi Gordon Davis, he was more humble about himself than I am about him. But he said that for him, a police officer is like a stray dog. It might be the sweetest thing in the world, but I don't want to test it. And I stand on his memories as much as I stand on his shoulders. I stand at his feet for wisdom as much as I stand at attention in the same way he does when he's pulled up by police officers. Which I've seen him do on his way to Brinkley, Arkansas to preach at the Gethsemane Missionary Baptist Church in 1988. My grandfather also said, because he was very good at one-liners, that you need justice like you need water. And we just kind of let that hang in the air. But outside of my grandfather, everybody I know intimately, all of the black men and even all of the black women that I know can recount some, one or several stories. Could tell you about encounters with police officers, about the desire to avoid police officers, and about the general desire, again, to just be left alone. And I could also personally tell several stories, and I could talk about the time that a police officer pulled up, guns drawn, as I sat on the front porch of my dormitory to ask me if I had stolen any bikes. Or I could talk about the time that I walked through Deer Path Park in Lake Forest, Illinois, and at 5 o'clock in the morning on my way to an early shift at Starbucks, for 3 police officers to bust through the bushes like the A-Team, full-out Mickey Mouse Squadron, with their guns drawn, because someone said they saw somebody suspicious walking the streets. I want to reiterate a general desire to be left alone. And as a good Methodist, I didn't qualify myself here. I want to first give honor to God, unto whom all black lives matter.
Make it black.
Giving honor to God, to whom black lives matter. Everyone's. And or I could talk about the time that when my mother spent her 24-hour shifts at working at the Advocates for Battered Women's Shelter, of being accosted by Capitol Police because we were playing on the Capitol grounds. Or perhaps about the time that, even as a registered person with the lanyard at the MLK Commission Youth Conference, we were pulled off the escalator and searched. But there's a particular time something happened this year that has drawn the kind of attention that I'm embarrassed about. February of this year, I was at a
political fundraiser running for State House of Representative District 34. Didn't succeed, pray my strength. And came outside, had a conversation with a city state legislator from Jefferson County, Arkansas. Was told in no uncertain terms by some folks living on the street that we should not be there. Blah, blah, blah. Perhaps you've heard the story. Police officers that I called, which is not something that I regularly do. But I'll be honest with you, it was my desire to have the police called on some white people that night. That's why I called them. But came, even after the description, I'm wearing exactly what I was wearing that night. And, even with that description, and I'm standing under the street light in the middle of the street, the police came marching up the street, guns drawn. And I want to be clear, because I think I've said this several times, that I was not actually in the moment afraid so much as I was shocked. And that's the embarrassing part. Because I have too many experiences with how police assume and deal with folks to be shocked that this could happen. And I have to dig deep and maybe ask myself, was I shocked because I thought I was special? Because here I am, a candidate for district office, standing with a sitting legislator on a public street after a successful fundraiser. That I have it in my mind that this could not or should not happen to me in particular. That's some shameful shit. Shameful because I know better. Shameful because I was a part of a wedding party that got hemmed up against the wall at 78th and Ellis in Chicago, and we were all wearing tuxes. What does it matter? Shameful because I was sitting on the front steps, a certified loan taken out student at an elite liberal arts college in Illinois. What did it matter? Ashamed because I was rather an industrious student, industrious enough to get up on a Saturday morning and to walk the 5 o'clock Starbucks shift. But what did that matter? And so I want to be honest with you. This is a sober, but it's not a sad assessment of life lived on the complete other side of the blue line. I've heard it called the thin blue line. But in my experiences, the gulf between the police as an institution and black people is just that. It's not a thin blue line, it's a gulf. But I need justice like I need water. And that's the way it is. Thank you.
Yeah.
If he needs justice like he needs water, he needs justice today. I appreciate that. That was powerful, Ron. We're going to rotate to our next speaker, storyteller, and it's Dr. Alexis Davis.
Come on, baby. Come on, baby.
Chemical psychologist, Reiki master, divine healer, hip-hopologist.
Yes.
Also is a founder of BBLVK Jewel, which is a community organization that aims to highlight jewels in the community serving people of African descent. Dr. Alex Davis provides professional and personal development training on cultural humility, working with clients of African descent, hip-hop healing workshop, as well as workshops on transgenerational trauma and healing amongst people of African descent. Check her out on Apple, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Please give a warm welcome for Alexis Davis.
So I just want to say the Davises came to show out tonight. All right. Just wanted to say that. So this poem is something that I wrote when I just wanted to go to the river and meditate. And it's interesting what came out because this book is actually the journal that I went to therapy with my mom for the very first time. And the title of the poem is Donna's Youngest Daughter. I used to be stuck in the narrative of being Donna's youngest daughter, caught between being far and wanting to go farther. I used to be stuck, rejecting the fact that I am Donna's youngest daughter, born to two parents who experienced a life of strife, drugs, abuse, hell, they invented a hard knock life. I used to be stuck, scared to look at and acknowledge the muck, stuck in being tired and tired of being stuck. So much so at the age of 13, I decided to give up. Take all these pills and everything will be okay. If they don't love you now, they'll love you someday. No knowledge of the ancestors before me. They stood and watched as the scene became gory. Divine intervention is what I call it. If my sister hadn't woke me up, I wouldn't be here asking, can I kick it? Yes, I can. I knew y'all would get that. I used to be stuck in the pain of being Donna's youngest daughter, caught between being far and wanting to go farther. Sexual abuse and rape taught me my body wasn't my own, so by the age of 16, I thought my worth was determined by what I put on. Too scared to be my authentic self because I'd been instructed she was a drama queen. Damn, I was so stuck I internalized what others believed about me. See, it never really was an issue being Donna's youngest daughter. It was the ancestral healing I'm here to do that at times had made me falter. Having to understand that my trauma has a lineage, I chose to go to college to examine, learn, and try to get rid of it. I spent 4 years cultivating this new me, realizing my tears are the ocean Yemoya resides in. My sensuality is the golden and sweet touch of Oshun's honey, realizing I have the power to move energy like Oya. Damn, being Donna's youngest daughter has turned out to be one hell of a job. Fast forward, graduated from college, got a plan now. Go to grad school, do this bid, take a stand now. Honestly, I don't know if I understood what that really meant. Didn't know that by becoming a doctor would be the conduit of how my healing would be sent. Being Donna's youngest daughter, the one who went far and is going even farther, graduate school showed me my shadows. Anger, fear, isolation, just to name a few. I had to face that I learned to sacrifice just to get through. My Ori didn't become clear until after I completed my doctoral program. Hell, I don't know how I thought it would come before. This system curriculum doesn't teach me about me. It doesn't reflect the Sybil's, Orisha, or any of my her story. I graduated and was still stuck. Came up for air but was still attached to the muck. Then I moved closer to home and saw understanding versus judgment. From that, I learned that there wasn't much different between my mom's story and my own. I realized through talking to her that she spoke life into me while pregnant. Even though she knew she couldn't be the mother she wanted to be, she still chose to carry me. Being Donna's youngest daughter has led me into my gifts. The waters of her womb was my first baptism. From there, I've been dying and being reborn ever since. I know you probably got tense like, damn, that start. But sometimes you have to put death to certain parts. See, I'm a healer and that I understand. So every day I wake up and choose the God inside of me instead of just operating as human. This life of being Donna's youngest daughter has come with its ups and downs. And it keeps pushing me further and further into my purpose, ready to answer the call. Being Donna's youngest daughter hasn't been so bad after all. I have a mother who loves her daughter, and God is so dope. They presented me with many mothers. For each life moment the ancestors provided. Because of that, I do my best to be guided. See, what you see is just a suit. I am a vessel, learning each day the beauty, peace, and love that resides in being Donna's youngest daughter.
All right.
My favorite part was sometimes you have to put depth to certain parts. That was powerful. Our next storyteller we have is Mrs. Clarice Abdul Bey.
All right. All right.
She's a native Arkansan. Together with her husband Kwame, she serves as the founder management of KWCP 98.9 LPFM student-oriented community radio. Also DJ of J Stone Vintage, sold on KABF 88.3 FM community radio, the voice of the people. a lifelong mentor, youth advocate. She also invests her time in honoring her skills and continuing learning processes as a DJ and photographer. She's also a founder and co-inventor of the Arkansas Peace and Justice Movement Memorial. She is called to tell a story of her infant son at the time who couldn't because as a mother and a BIPOC, she had to work the trauma and experience for 5 years. Please give a warm welcome to Miss Clarice.
Tell the story. I remember one evening, my best friend and I, one of my best friends, who happened to be a doula at the time, we were talking about how we were laughing about it, but I was serious about having another child. And how I wanted to feel like a superhero. Not taking any drugs, not having doctors around me, but just in the loving comfort of my own home, making the decision to have another child with my husband and my family. I remember after we had that conversation, thinking about planning, reading every book I could get my hands on. Just going to classes. My husband Kwame and I went to birthing classes and studied together. He is an advanced EMT, and so we wanted to have our child without any, it's called having a child without assistance. And that means not having even a midwife. Unassisted birth, that's the name. My friend was a doula, so I had the support of my doula, and she was there to take care of me. She was there pre-birth. She was even there after. But I remember thinking, as we began to plan, as we decided this is what we want to do, he was not an accident. Let me just say that. We planned for him. We took every thought that we had, every book again that we found to make sure that we were taking every precaution. And not more than that, we were making sure that we provided a peaceful place for him to land. I can remember reading statistics about Arkansas, and this is still true today. And actually, just recently, I was reading some statistics of the CDC saying that Arkansas has the highest pregnancy infancy mortality rate in the nation.
Wow.
And it's far more. It's a lot more for women of color. Mm-hmm. And so for me, bringing him into a safe, peaceful place, full of love, full of care, full of thoughtfulness, and being surrounded by people who could catch him and he could see for the first time was very important to us. I remember the love, the energy that was in the house. I was in and out different rooms. I was in labor for about 48 hours, 48 plus, but it wasn't like what you see on TV. It wasn't like where you see women when they're like screaming and they're upset and they're like, and you're terrified for them because they look terrified. It wasn't like that. It was like running a marathon. Literally like running a marathon. I had to breathe. I was able to eat. I was able to get on a little exercise ball. I was able to have him comfort me. And then I didn't want to see him after a while. He was this thing that bothered me. I mean, I loved him, but then I was like, get away. Like, this is your fault. At the same time, he was a needed energy for me. My doula, beautiful. I love her. She was there. She was comforting. She was loving. We decided to have a water lotus birth. Lotus birth is basically a birth that the baby is attached to the placenta once you birth the child. You have that, you preserve that placenta, and it feeds the child all the nutrition, the blood that's in it, and it will eventually dry out off, and it will just snap off on its own with no assistant like cutting or anything like that. It actually is, from what we read, healthier, but you know, I'm not a doctor who could say that was something that statistically that is the standard, but from what I read, it is. And so we decided it. We wanted it because we didn't want him to be poked, prodded, cut, none of that. We wanted him to come into a life that he could just be at peace with no violence. For us, that was very important. With all of the violence going on in the world, we did not want him to come into the world with any violence. So, Sunday morning, I remember clearly. Sunday morning at 10:26 a.m., while on my knees, pushed him out in the pool. Kwame called him, and he was the first person that he saw. It was beautiful. It was loving. There was peace. And I remember throughout the day, it was like this movie. We were kind of floating, cleaning up, and I was resting and preserving his placenta, and preserving the house that he was birthed in. It was time to go to bed, and it was 1 a.m. in the morning. And I remember we were very exhausted. So I remember him being in the bed, being in his own baby bed. And we heard a little, like a rattle in the back of his throat. Almost kind of like when you have mucus in the back of your throat. It was like that. And so being in the state that we were in, again, we were exhausted, but we were also wanting to make sure. I think if the after hours clinic was open where we could see a physician, we would have gone there. But it just so happened it was 1 a.m. in the morning, and we decided, you know what? We're tired. We may not hear him. We want to make sure that he's breathing properly, and that we don't go to sleep and not hear anything happen. So for us, it was very important to make sure that he was okay. Again, the ER was the only thing that was open, so we went very unassuming, not thinking at all that what we would experience. We came in, we had him and his house. The ER doctor received us, but he was very condescending. He didn't understand. He was ignorant of water births and lotus births, and made fun of there may be some rotting flesh near the child. Not thinking that we even knew what we were doing. That we even thought out this whole thing. He proceeded to say he wanted to give him formula, and I stressed that I wanted to continue to breastfeed him, and that because I was so tired, my milk wasn't coming in fully. So what I wanted to do, I requested a lactation specialist. And I remember requesting this lactation specialist twice. and he kept saying what he wanted to do. And so he said, I want to watch him for 48 hours and make sure that he's okay. And for me as a mother, knowing, because again, this is not my first time having a child, knowing that we were both birthing, he was being born, I was birthing him, we were both drained, tired, and needed nutrition. And that was it. But he thought that he knew more. And so we agreed. And he said, oh, I want to keep him for 24 hours first. And just kind of watch him and give him some fluids and that type thing. And then I agreed, and I wasn't really with it, but Kwame was like, I think the EMT came out in him and was like, let's just do it. We were sent to the NICU. And when we went up to the NICU, which is the neonatal intensive care unit for very sick children and babies, we went to the unit. Immediately, the NICU physician rushed in. She sat down. Now, let me back up, because the physician that we talked to who met us in the ER was male and white. And I don't know if that makes a difference, but just hear me out. We go to the NICU. The female doctor who comes in to us is female and white. She immediately starts asking me questions about my health, his health, what we did, why our religion, those type things. We were expressing ourselves because we were saying we did not want to stay. We wanted to do the 24 hours, and that was it. Her thing, she immediately said, you're going to do 48 hours. And I want to do blood tests. I want to do antibiotics. I want to do all of these things with no knowledge of what was going on with him. He was not sick. He was a beautiful color. He was not choking. There was nothing wrong. Let me just say that the ER physician told us before we went up on the floor that all he needed to do was cough or cry hard to get the phlegm out. So we just, like I said, we wanted to go home, but when we got there, she said 48 hours. We said no. We'd like to go home. We'd like to do the 24 hours, make sure he's okay, and then go home after that. What she did was she left. She brought back a social worker. The social worker came in, white female, immediately said, you have 72 hours now. You're on a 72-hour hold. You can go, but he stays. At that time, I felt my mind melt. I literally felt like Seth from the book Beloved. I held him tighter. And I screamed a primal cry. Because the social worker called DCH. No, it was DCFS. Yes, DCFS. Is that it? Mm-hmm. I don't know anything about that. All I know is they take people's children. After a long labor, loving him, nourishing him, and then being told that we could possibly lose our baby that we loved, labored, planned for. Kwame was advocating because, again, I felt my mind melting. And he was told to be quiet and not to cause trouble. And there was a police officer that was called. He came up to the floor. He had his hand on his gun, and he told Kwame to come outside the door right now. You come out right now. Kwame left, and again, my mind. If you can imagine seeing your husband leave with a white male police officer with his hand on his gun telling him, come out of the room, thinking you're going to lose your child. He came out. He came back in maybe 5 or so minutes later, and he was visibly shaken. Visibly. He was shaking. And I asked him what happened. This is later. He said they had him against the wall, told him, what's the problem? What's the issue? Are you going to be into trouble? He said, I have a right to advocate for my child. I have a right to advocate for my family. They said, he told him, you can stay here if you don't cause trouble. Tell the story. "72 hours turned into 2 months, a month and a half, where they were experimenting, taking blood, running tests, in and out of our room. We were in an observation room, and we didn't know whether it was night or day unless we looked at a clock. Until a nurse, bless her heart, came and said, I'm going to move you to the rooms where the families are, where there are windows and lights. So, after all of that, and after a month and a half, we were released. There was, again, he never had a fever. He never got sick. He was hooked up to all of these things. They were running tests on him. And they came up with all of these little things that it could be. It was one, his heart maybe, all of these things, but there was never any proof that he was sick. We went home. And our lives were changed and different from that point. No attorney could help us. Nobody wanted to touch it. Because after all, it was one of the top children's hospital in the country, right? There are physicians, nurses, and doctors who are amazing, who save lives, who are there for the children. And I appreciate that. And they're not all bad. But in this case, our voices, our parenthood, our planning, our wanting him to come into an environment with no violence and no harm, it was not respected. Our voices didn't matter. None of that mattered. None of it. We would do it all over again. We would do it all over again. We just wouldn't go to Arkansas Children's Hospital. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Clarice. There was always this joke in middle school that is synonymous with your story, and they would always ask, if you could be born again, would you still be born black? Did everybody hear that joke? Would you still be born black? And it's powerful to hear you say, if you could, you would do it all over again. So I'm grateful for that answer. Our next story coming to the stage, we have Reverend Denise Donnell. Reverend Denise Donnell. Donnell. She'll be speaking for Renford S. Williams. Mr. Williams is 30 years old, Little Rock, Arkansas. He was raised by a single mother until he was about 13 years old, at the point which he succumbed to drug addiction and mental illness. He knows who his father is. He has spoken to him on different occasions, but doesn't know him. Has been in the system since 13 group homes, institutions, juvenile detention centers. He is all too familiar with the system and social, economic, and ethnic disparities that plague our country, especially the black community. He agreed to participate in this event because he believes in every movement, effort that seeks to bring positive change and help. Please give her a warm welcome, Miss Denise Donnell.
Good evening. I am privileged and honored and humbled tonight to be able to stand in this space with you and with all of you as a proxy for a young man, a young black man, that I will refer to as Williams. I am Denise, Reverend Dr. Denise Donnell, the founder and owner of Just Talk Consulting.
All right.
I am also the host of Community Voices, 9 a.m. on Tuesday mornings on KABF 88.3, the voice of the people, right? KABF is located at 1201 South Main Street. And it was to that address that Williams wrote his first letter in June of this year, and thus our correspondence began. He writes the poems and I recite them on the radio. Williams's talent is too great to be trapped behind the walls of a criminal injustice system that has been hunting him since before he was born. And so tonight, he's not behind those walls. He is here with us. Because these are his words that were pulled from his letters and arranged in a way that will bring life to the essence of who he is and deliver the message that he wants all of us and all the world to know, that he can change the world. He can, and he will. Life is seamlessly unraveling all around us. Unbecoming. Unwilling adherence to a worship without love, to a life without care, to a name without meaning. Say my name, Williams. Let it roll off your tongue and fall out of your mouth and tumble to the ground so that the essence of who I am can be built upon it. Yeah, I'm from the streets. For real, for real. Name the system, and I've been through it. Been through it in the worst way. Racism, check. Sexism, check. Classism, check. Discrimination, dehumanization, degradation, deprivation, check. And I'm still here. Can't nothing stop me. Petty theft in 2011, and I'm still on my way to heaven. Heaven, that movement that outlines my struggle. I always explain and I always define and I always need recognizing for the gifts that I hold, for these treasures that I carry in my bold black body. What if that was my brother who got shot, my sister who was attacked? You bait me to see me enraged, but I'm a man of peace. I never engage, not with my body, only with my mind. Education, inspiration, admiration, complication, simplified for the scared one to understand. If all lives matter, that includes black. You're not saying it don't change the facts. You always talking about that was way back then. When? Yesterday? Yeah, that's what you should say. Ain't nothing changed. Everything is still the same.
That's why we keep saying their names. Ayanna Stanley Jones, Tamir Rice, Tyree King, Michelangelo and Makia Jackson, Cameron Tillman, Andre Green. I could go on, but I'd run out of breath. And then I can't breathe. I can't breathe. And I need my breath to fuel my voice, to be their vote, to be their voice, to stand for justice, because that's my choice. Since I'm behind bars, how is your soul? Y'all always ask me. No, let me ask you. How is your soul? Seeing Jacob Blake get shot in the back 7 times, watching George Floyd die in 9, no indictment for Breonna Taylor, yet outrage over her white neighbor who is still alive and about to get justice. How is my soul? My soul is free, because I can definitely see the fate that awaits me when my traits are called. That's why we need tactics, policies, and strategies. Not broken statues and old songs sung by people who don't understand, who can't understand, who don't want to understand, who refuse to understand, who refuse to say, I can. I can change. I can shift. I can do something, anything, everything to stand for justice, to demand equity, and to love equality. It really ain't that hard, Joe. Either you for justice or you not. Either you are going to contribute to the remedy or continue to rest in the stupidity. The choice is yours. Destruction or construction, stressed and depressed or blessed. Blessed with hands that dismantle systems. Not because you're doing me a favor, but because justice, that's your only savior.
Wow, extremely. I felt like he was in this room with us. And she said he was in this room, and he was definitely in this room. Extremely powerful. Our last storyteller, but not our last storyteller, is Jasmine, who will be joining us from Missouri. And she'll be remote. Jasmine Medley Gibson is a lifelong Little Rocker and a lover of the natural state. Now living in Columbia, Missouri. She's a follower of Christ who has devoted daily yoga practice in her 9 to 5. She works to encourage young people to be their best selves and reach for the stars through City Year. She felt called to share her story because she is a magical black woman, yogi, and no one can tell her story like she can. It's time for us to take up space, she says, without fear, with no reservation, and continue to be her. Please give another hand for Jasmine Medley Gibson.
So Jesus, yoga, and therapy saved my life. Along with my faith practice, yoga has become a super important part of my life that has grounded me and kept me through a lot of crazy times the past 12 years. When my mom got sick, I was able to go to yoga and cry and vent. The next year when my grandmother got sick and died, I was able to go to yoga again and cry and get out any frustrations that I felt. Anything that was in the real world, I didn't have to pay attention to. It was just me and my mat. And yoga became this place of refuge for me, this place where I could go and leave everything else behind. If it wasn't on the mat, I didn't have to worry about it. And that was so freeing. But even in that free space, even in that space that was my refuge, I still felt like my blackness was being stifled. Even if I didn't try, something was holding my blackness back. When we Westerners think of yoga, we don't really think of the ancient practice from India. We think of ladies who lunch and they go and they socialize and then they go to a yoga class. I like lunch, but I'm not a white lady. And when I go to yoga, it's not just an exercise for my body. It's an exercise for my mind. And when I come into a class, I don't think people expect what I bring into that space. I'm a very proud Black woman, a loud, vocal, boisterous Black woman. Most of the time when I go to class, you're probably going to hear me yelling about the door being open in a hot class. Close the door. It's a hot class. You're probably going to hear me cuss when the teacher calls out a pose that maybe I don't like so much. Or in the lobby, sometimes you'll hear me talking about the current events going on today and this nasty, sexist, racist dude who's ruining this country. But then I stop myself and I say, well, maybe I shouldn't complain about the door being open. You know, maybe that person didn't know. Or I probably shouldn't cuss in class, in a yoga class. That's kind of anti-yoga, right? Sometimes maybe I catch myself saying, I should probably not talk a whole lot about politics and current events in this country because I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want to be seen as that angry Black woman. Essentially, I find myself policing my own tone, code switching, changing who I am so the next person can feel safe, even though, let's be honest, I'm probably the more likely target. I don't want to be seen as the angry Black woman, but sometimes even the conversations I hear others having about, well, if this person had complied, or if they weren't wearing this article of clothing, or, you know, if that thug hadn't done whatever. I even hear sometimes other white yogis saying things about their hair texture and how nappy it is. All of this stuff, none of it's ever directed towards me, but it's directed towards me. And I feel that heaviness every single time. And as much as I find myself code switching, I stop and then I say, you know, I'm not going to make anybody else feel safe when I'm the one who doesn't feel safe. I'm not going to stop and not be who I am because you think I'm angry or this other person thinks I'm out of line. As long as people who look like me are getting killed for wearing hoodies or sleeping in their own houses or complying, I have to say something. I have to speak up. And I will. No more silence. I have been Jasmine Medley my whole entire life. And I'll continue to be Jasmine Medley for the rest of my life. Even in yoga. Especially on the mat. Yeah. As hard as it is. So I'll see you there.
Thank you so much for that, Jasmine. All the way, Clinton School student also, all the way from Missouri speaking and also joining us with her voice in this room tonight. I really like her touch on code switching because, you know, I like to think that code switching is just some kind of term or word that's thrown around, you know, a lot of times. But for Black people or brown and Black people, Latinx people, it's survival. It's survival. It determines whether we're going to enter a room, exit. It determines whether we're going to sit at a table or not. So I really appreciate that. Lastly, please give yourself a round of applause. Yes. This applause is for you. Very powerful stories in this room tonight. I feel like I know everybody in here a lot more than I knew them when they came in, even if I knew you before you came in. I appreciate the strength, and also I want to just use a word here, the vulnerability that it takes to get up here and speak to things that you don't want to revisit, that you don't want to relive, that may not necessarily look so bright on your life's timeline. So I really want to appreciate Hillary Trudell, my teacher, my friend, she's heard my story a million times, so thanks for the invite. I also want to thank everybody in this room and the people that are, running, in the political race. Good luck to you. I hope that goes well. So we've heard it all tonight. We've heard the poetry, to the rhymes, to the stories that have to be dead, and the rhymes to that, and we've heard the struggles, we've heard the challenges, we've heard the conquerors, we've even heard the harmonica, y'all. So right now I want to bring to the stage Mr. Kwame Abdul-Bey. He is the co-founder of Washitaw Foothills Youth Media, Arts and Literacy Collective. Give him a warm round of applause.
And this is President Lauren. October 22nd is the National Day of Protest to stop police brutality, repression, and the criminalization of a generation. Yesterday was October 22nd. It was the 24th annual observance of the National Day of Protests to stop police brutality, repression, and the criminalization of a generation. Towards the end of the summer, because this year was a reckoning. It was a reckoning for Little Rock. It was a reckoning for Pulaski County, for Arkansas, for the United States, for the world. It was a reckoning where we had an opportunity over the last couple of months while we were all sheltered in place to really think about and consider what justice really looks like, what equity really looks like, and what we want to do to move forward to going towards justice and equity. Since yesterday was the 24th anniversary of the National Day of Protest to stop police brutality, repression, and the criminalization of a generation. In August, as the protests were kind of dying down, particularly here in Arkansas, I reached out to Governor Asa Hutchinson. And I reached out to him because I had a request, a specific request of him, and I wanted him to issue a proclamation recognizing the 24th anniversary of the National Day of Protests to stop police brutality, repression, and the criminalization of a generation. And he told me, hell no. He said that it was too divisive. He didn't say hell no. But that's what I heard. I'm like, it was a slap in the face. Because the thing is all I did was I took the proclamation, I took the proclamation that the FOP had him issue in February, and I just tweaked the wordage where I took out police and I put citizens, et cetera, et cetera. But he said that such a proclamation was too divisive. Wow. So, I got on the phone and I called Hillary. And I said, Hillary, we need to do something where we can have a stage where Black voices in Arkansas can be heard, and there can be an opportunity for empathy and understanding. And she said, let's do it. And so we're here. So again, as Tim said, I thank you. Yes, I thank you for providing that opportunity for these wonderful storytellers to be here. And then you guys that are watching on Facebook and YouTube, y'all gotta check this out. The preserved moose. This is my spot from now on. There you go. I would like for everyone to put their masks on and come up and let's do a Saturday Night Live ending. So let's all come on up. All storytellers. Please, please, please come up. I want to thank what we had. You guys just come on up and just be seen. I'm gonna grab you. Okay. So what we've experienced here are voices, black voices, discussing their experiences with structural violence here in the state of Arkansas. And I want everyone to really take in what's been said. There's a lot of power. There's a lot of transparency, a lot of vulnerability, as you said, Tim. And we need to figure out what we're going to do to move forward. We've heard these stories, right. Tragic stories. I shed a couple of tears over there, especially with my wife, because I re-experienced that trauma as she talked about it. So let's use this as an opportunity to move forward. And I want to thank each of you for you having the willingness and the courage to come into this space and we work together to put our voices forward. This is Black Lives Matter, brought to you by the Yarn, Washitaw Foothills Youth Media, Arts and Literacy Collective, and the Preserved Moose. Ring that bell one more time, man. Thank you, good night. Uh-oh, pitch down.